Alex sat up in his bed, startled by the sudden blaring of an alarm. At first he thought it was only a dream. The thin red lights flashing across the dorm ceiling felt unreal, like something from a bad movie. But the vibrating hum beneath the floor reminded him that it was not his imagination. He rubbed his eyes and looked around, confused. The room he shared was dim, shadows stretching across the strange, curved walls that always made him feel as if he lived inside a shell. His roommate was already awake. Koresh stood near the door, tall and still, his wide shoulders blocking the faint glow of the control panel. His large black eyes reflected the flashing red light, giving him an intense and unsettling look. Alex noticed that Koresh's arms were stiff, hands curled close to his sides as if he was bracing for something. "What's happening?" Alex asked, his voice cracking. Koresh did not answer at first. He tilted his head slightly, listening. The alarm continued, but Alex realized there was another sound beneath it, a low thrum that made the air feel heavy. Then with a sharp hiss, the door sealed itself. The metallic edges fused, glowing briefly as the security lock engaged. Alex got out of bed and stumbled forward.
Wait, what was that?
Why did the door close? He pressed his hand against the surface, but the cold metal did not budge. There was no handle to pull, no panel to open. It was locked completely. Koresh finally spoke, his voice deep and clipped. "Lockdown. You stay away from door. Lockdown." The word sent a shiver through Alex. He had been warned that emergencies sometimes happened in the alien academy, where he had been accepted as an exchange student, but he never thought it would happen to him. He looked back at Koresh, who had not moved from his post. "Okay, but why are you standing there? Is it something dangerous?" Koresh's eyes flicked toward him. His alien face, with its flat ridges and faintly glowing lines along the skin, was hard to read, but Alex sensed tension. "Stay. Safe," Koresh said, as if those two words explained everything. Alex didn't feel safe at all. The air seemed to grow heavier with each second. He could still hear that low vibration, like something alive outside the room. His mind raced. What if there was a fire? What if the building was under attack? He pressed his ear to the wall, trying to listen past the alarm. That was when he caught a faint sound, scraping. Something was dragging against the corridor floor. He stepped back quickly. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Koresh gave no answer, but his stance changed. His shoulders stiffened more and his hands twitched slightly as if ready to act. He was guarding the door, Alex realized, like a soldier expecting battle. Alex's throat went dry. "So, there is something out there." He wanted Koresh to deny it, to laugh and say it was just part of the drill, but the alien only stared at the door. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the alarm. The human boy's thoughts spun in circles. He was thousands of light years from Earth, in a school full of species he barely understood, and now he was trapped in a room with his alien roommate acting like a statue at the gate of a fortress. Panic threatened to rise in him, but he forced himself to breathe. "If we're locked in," he said carefully, "then they can't get in either, right?" Koresh finally glanced at him again. His eyes held no comfort. "Lock strong, but not always enough." The words hit Alex harder than the alarm. Not enough? He imagined claws scraping through the door, shadows slipping into the room. His hands shook and he shoved them into his pockets to hide it. He thought about his parents back on Earth, about how they had worried when he left. They would never imagine their son standing in the dark, trapped in a strange room with an alien guarding him from something unseen. Trying to distract himself, he sat back on the bed. The sheets were cold, the mattress thin, but it gave him a place to sit instead of pacing like a caged animal. He kept watching Koresh, studying the way the alien refused to shift even an inch. It was like Koresh was carved from stone, silent and unmoving, except for the faint rise and fall of his chest. Alex wanted to ask more questions, but something about Koresh's rigid focus made him stay quiet. He realized his roommate was not only guarding the door, he was also listening, watching, protecting. For the first time since he had arrived on this planet, Alex understood that Koresh was not simply a roommate forced to share a dorm with him. He was a shield. The thought did not make Alex feel comfortable. It made him feel small. Why was Koresh standing guard for him? The weak human instead of expecting him to help. The question burned inside, but he didn't dare speak it aloud. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The alarm finally dimmed, leaving only the heavy silence of the sealed room. Alex leaned against the wall, staring at the faint glow of alien patterns that shifted across the surface. His eyes grew heavy, but every time he closed them, he saw shadows moving outside the door. And still Koresh stood, guarding, silent, waiting for morning. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, listening hard. The alarm had finally stopped, but silence was no comfort. It felt heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on him. Every little sound in the room, the faint hum of the ventilation system, the creak of the bed frame, even his own breathing, seemed louder now. His heart thumped against his ribs, refusing to calm. Koresh still stood near the door, motionless, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the floor. His black eyes did not blink often, but when they did, Alex could see a faint shimmer as if reflecting light that wasn't there. Alex wanted to ask again what was happening, but a part of him was afraid of the answer. Then the sound came again, a scrape. Slow and rough, it echoed faintly through the corridor beyond the door, like claws dragging across metal. Alex's stomach tightened. He froze, straining his ears. The scrape came again, this time closer. It was not the sound of machinery, not the hum of a system breaking down. It was alive. Koresh, Alex whispered, his voice cracking. Do you hear that? Koresh did not turn his head, but his body shifted slightly, the muscles under his strange patterned skin tightening. Yes, he said simply. His deep voice carried no fear, but there was a tension in it that Alex could not miss. Alex stepped back toward the wall, away from the door. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be another student? Someone trapped in the hall? But the scrape didn't sound like footsteps or hands. It sounded hungry. The scraping stopped suddenly. For a moment, Alex almost convinced himself he had imagined it, but then came a low growl, muffled through the wall deep enough to rattle in his chest. He pressed his hands against his ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside him, making every instinct scream to run. Koresh moved his head slightly as if tracking the noise. He reached one long hand toward the wall, not touching it, but hovering close. Predators, he said at last. The word was heavy, final. Alex's throat went dry. Predators? What kind of predators? Koresh finally turned his head, his black eyes landing on Alex. Not your concern. You stay away. Not his concern. The words felt like a slap. Alex wanted to shout, to demand more. He was trapped in the same room, wasn't he? If there was danger, how could it not be his concern? But when he looked at Koresh's face, so firm and unreadable, the words stuck in his throat. The growl outside deepened, joined by another. Then came a heavy thud, like something striking the wall down the hall. Alex jumped, his back hitting the curved surface of the room. His pulse raced faster. He thought about Earth, about safe nights at home when danger meant nothing more than a barking dog or a storm outside. Here danger had claws and teeth. He looked at Koresh again. The alien stood like a statue, eyes locked on the door. Alex realized Koresh had no weapon, no shield, nothing but his own body between Alex and whatever was out there. You're just standing there, Alex muttered nervously. What if it comes in? Koresh's head tilted. Then I fight. But I keep you behind, Alex swallowed. He wanted to believe Koresh could win, but he had seen how massive some alien species were, how sharp their limbs looked. If one of those creatures outside forced its way in, could Koresh really hold them off? The scraping started again, slower this time, moving along the length of the corridor. Alex shivered, imagining something dragging itself along, searching. Then came another sound, a sniffing, wet and heavy, right at the edge of the door. Alex's blood turned cold. The thing was right there. He backed up until he pressed against his bed, his knees trembling. He wanted to scream, but Koresh lifted a hand, palm open, signaling him to be silent. Alex clamped his mouth shut, breathing through his nose in short, shaky bursts. The sniffing grew louder, then paused. For a terrifying moment, Alex swore he could hear the creature's breath seeping through the tiny seams of the sealed door. He closed his eyes, wishing himself anywhere else. A laugh with his friends back home. A walk under the blue skies of Earth. Anywhere but here, trapped in a room with monsters outside. Then slowly the sound faded. The sniffing moved away, followed by the scrape of claws against the corridor floor. The creature was moving on. Alex let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His legs felt weak, like they might give out. He looked at Koresh, who had not moved an inch through it all. Why didn't it break in? Alex whispered. Koresh's answer was calm, almost too calm. They test, they wait, But they fear something, Alex frowned. Fear? What? For a long moment, Koresh said nothing. His eyes stayed on the door as if speaking too much would call the creatures back. At last he replied with a voice low and certain. They fear you, the words made Alex blink. He pointed to himself. Me? That's impossible. I'm human, I'm weak compared to you, compared to everyone here. Koresh did not answer. He only turned back toward the door, his tall frame blocking it like a wall. His silence said more than words could. Alex sat down again, his thoughts spinning. The idea made no sense, yet Koresh had spoken it as truth. Something about humans, about him, was keeping the predators from tearing through. And he had no idea why. Alex could not let go of Koresh's words. They echoed in his mind again and again. They fear you. It sounded ridiculous. He was only a human exchange student, barely able to keep up with alien studies, often treated as fragile by other species. How could predators fear him? The thought sat inside him like a stone, heavy and impossible to understand. Koresh still stood watch at the door, silent and firm. His broad frame seemed carved from the same metal as the walls. Alex wanted answers, but he was also afraid of them. Still, the silence was worse than fear. He finally pushed himself to speak. What do you mean, they fear me? Alex's voice was uneven. I can't fight them. I can't even face them. If that door opened, I'd be the first to run. Koresh did not turn around, but his shoulders moved slightly as he breathed. Not fight. Not run. Different, Alex frowned. Different how? Koresh shifted his head, his dark eyes glinting in the faint emergency lights. Humans smell. Strange energy. Strange predators sense it. Makes them restless. Alex let out a laugh, though it was nervous and short. So you're saying my smell scares monsters? That's ridiculous. Koresh's face remained serious. Not ridiculous, real. Alex rubbed his forehead. The alien wasn't joking, and that made it harder to accept. He thought back to the moment he pressed his hand to the wall earlier. The noises had faded almost instantly. Could it really have been him? Could something about his presence push the predators away? He shook his head. I don't buy it. I'm just me. Nothing special. For the first time that night, Koresh moved from his post. Slowly, he stepped toward Alex. His height cast a shadow that stretched over the human boy. Koresh crouched slightly so his black eyes met Alex's brown ones. His voice was low, heavy with certainty. You survive. Your kind always survives. Predators know. They sense history in you. Alex stared back, his chest tightening. The words sank deeper than he wanted them to. He remembered the history lessons back on Earth. Wars, storms, disasters, and yet humanity always found a way forward. People rebuilt cities after destruction, sailed oceans without knowing what lay ahead, walked on the surface of the moon. Maybe Koresh saw something Alex himself could not, but still Alex felt useless. His hands were shaking. He wasn't a soldier or an explorer. He was just a student who missed his family and longed for familiar skies. I don't feel strong, he admitted quietly. Koresh studied him for a moment before returning to the door. Strength not always feel. Sometimes only show when tested. The words lingered in the air like a promise. Alex hugged his arms around himself, listening again to the corridor outside. For a while there was only silence. But silence was never safe here. Soon the scraping came again. This time it was louder, more deliberate, as if the creatures wanted to remind them they had not left. Alex flinched. He could almost picture sharp claws dragging slowly over the floor, closer and closer. He forced himself not to cry out. Koresh placed one hand against the door, standing firm, his back straight as a wall. Alex could not sit still. His fear was too loud inside him. He walked toward Koresh, ignoring the trembling in his legs. What if the door doesn't hold? He asked. Koresh answered without looking at him. Then I fight, and me? Alex whispered. Koresh turned his head slightly. You stay behind, the words stung. Alex felt heat rise in his chest. He didn't want to hide behind someone else. He wanted to help. He wanted to matter. But how could he? He had no weapon, no alien strength, no strange powers. All he had was fear, and yet, maybe fear itself was power. The scraping paused again, right outside. A low growl rolled through the metal, shaking Alex's bones. Koresh braced himself, his hand pushing harder against the door. Alex pressed his palm beside Koresh's. The cold surface stung his skin, but he refused to pull back. His heart hammered, but he thought about what Koresh said. that predators sensed something in humans. That maybe his fear, his will to survive, was enough. Almost at once, the growl shifted. It became uncertain, fading into a hiss. Then the scraping retreated, slow but steady until the corridor fell silent once more. Alex gasped, pulling his hand back. He looked at Koresh, wide-eyed. "Did you see that? It worked." "They actually left." Koresh gave the smallest nod. "Yes, you understand now." Alex's knees nearly buckled. He sat back down, struggling to catch his breath. His fear was still there, sharp and heavy, but it mixed now with something else, a strange spark of pride. For the first time he felt that maybe he was not as useless as he thought. Koresh returned to his post, silent once more. But this time, when he stood guard, Alex didn't only see a protector. He saw a partner, someone who believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. The night was far from over. The predators were still out there, waiting, testing, searching for weakness. But Alex no longer felt like a helpless child hiding behind the strength of others. He was part of the defense now, even if his role was small. And deep down in the quiet corner of his mind, he began to wonder if Koresh was right. Maybe humans did carry something inside them. Something even monsters could not understand but instinctively feared. The thought gave him a fragile hope, enough to face the darkness a little longer. The night dragged on, slow and heavy, as if time itself refused to move. Alex sat on the bed again, his eyes fixed on the door. The memory of what had just happened refused to leave him. His hand on the cold surface, the growls fading, the scraping retreating, it was real. Somehow he had driven the predators away just by being there. Koresh had returned to his silent post, his tall frame unshaken, but Alex knew the alien had seen it too. He wanted to ask more, to understand, but every time he opened his mouth the words felt small and weak. So he stayed quiet, listening to the dark hum of the sealed dormitory. Minutes turned to hours, or at least it felt that way. The room had no windows, only faint glowing lines that shifted across the walls. Alex stared at them until they blurred. His eyelids grew heavy, but each time he drifted, a noise from the corridor snapped him back awake. The predators were still out there. They wanted him to remember. The scraping began again, slower this time, deliberate, like fingers dragging along the walls. Alex shivered. He turned toward Koresh, who remained calm but alert, his black eyes never leaving the door. Alex forced himself to stand. His legs trembled, but he crossed the room until he stood beside Koresh. "I want to help again," Alex whispered. Koresh looked at him briefly, his expression unreadable. "You are afraid," he said. "Of course I'm afraid," Alex shot back. "But if fear keeps them away, then maybe I can use it." Koresh studied him for a long moment, then finally gave a slow nod. "Stay close. Hand here." He touched the wall just beside the door frame. Alex pressed his palm against the metal. It was cold at first, then warm from his skin. His pulse raced, but he tried to steady it. Outside, the scraping slowed. The predators were listening. A deep growl rose, vibrating through the door. Alex's heart leapt into his throat, but he forced himself not to pull back. Instead, he thought of Earth, of the stories he had read, of the people who had survived storms, deserts, wars, and space itself. Humanity had never given up, even when everything around them tried to break them. He clung to that thought like a rope. The growl faltered. It grew thin, then faded. A second sound, sharper and more aggressive, tried to rise, but it too dimmed as Alex pressed harder, standing straighter, refusing to let his fear crush him. Koresh's eyes flickered, and for the first time Alex thought he saw respect in them. "They retreat," Koresh said. Alex exhaled shakily, pulling his hand back. Sweat clung to his forehead, but a strange sense of strength pulsed in his chest. "So it's true," he whispered. "They really do fear me," Koresh nodded. "Yes, fear what they do not understand. They cannot fight it." Alex sank onto the bed again, his body trembling from the effort. He wasn't sure if it was courage or just exhaustion keeping him steady, but he knew he had made a difference. He wasn't just baggage to be carried anymore. The silence returned. For a while, there were no more scratches or growls, only the faint hum of the sealed room. Koresh relaxed slightly, though he still stayed by the door. Alex leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, trying to calm his thoughts. "Koresh," he said softly, breaking the quiet. "Yes." "Why do you stand guard if I can do this? Why not rest?" Koresh's head tilted. "Because you do not know your strength yet. You are new, untrained. If predators test harder, you may fail. I do not fail. I stand. Alex smiled faintly despite his exhaustion. So you're here to back me up. Koresh blinked once, slowly. Yes, we guard together. The words warmed Alex more than the dim lights could. For the first time the lockdown began, he didn't feel completely alone, but the night was not done with them. A sudden thud hit the door, hard enough to make the metal shiver. Alex jumped to his feet. Another thud followed, heavier, angrier, shaking the walls. Koresh placed both hands on the door now, bracing his body against it. They grow bold, he said grimly. Alex's heart raced. He couldn't just sit back this time. He hurried to the door and pressed both palms flat against the cold surface. The vibrations rattled through him, but he stayed firm. His breath came fast, but he forced himself to remember everything Koresh had said. Strength shows when tested. The thuds continued, but after a long moment they weakened. The final one was softer, almost hesitant. Then silence. Deep, heavy silence. Alex sagged back, breathing hard. He looked at Koresh. Did we win? Koresh's face remained serious, but his tone softened. Not win, not yet, but they know now. They fear more than before. Alex sat back on the bed, chest heaving. He was exhausted, but deep inside, something new burned within him. Hope. He had faced the creatures, even without seeing them, and they had retreated. The night was far from over, but Alex no longer felt trapped in the room. He felt like he was holding it, keeping it safe. And beside him, Koresh stood tall, no longer guarding alone. Together they would endure until morning. The night stretched on like an endless tunnel. Alex felt as though the hours were crawling by, each one heavier than the last. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ventilation and the occasional creak of the walls. His heart had slowed a little since the last attack, but every time he thought of resting, he imagined claws tearing through the door again. Sleep felt impossible. Koresh still stood at the door, a steady shadow against the dim light. He had not moved much since the lockdown began, and Alex wondered how he had the strength to stay so still for so long. His alien roommate was like a sentinel carved from stone. Alex both admired and envied him. Finally, Alex broke the silence. How long until morning? Koresh answered without turning. Few more hours. The thought made Alex groan. A few more hours of this endless waiting with predators circling like ghosts in the hall. He lay back on the bed staring at the curved ceiling. The glowing lines there shifted faintly, almost like waves. It reminded him of the night skies on Earth, full of stars he used to watch from his rooftop. The memory was bittersweet. Do you ever miss your home? Alex asked quietly. Koresh's head tilted slightly. Yes, but guard duty teaches patience. Distance does not matter. Duty is everywhere, Alex frowned. Guard duty? You mean you've done this before? Koresh finally turned to look at him, his dark eyes steady. My people guard the weak from the wild. It is tradition. Strength is not only for self. It is for those beside you. The words struck Alex. He realized Koresh didn't see guarding him as a burden. He saw it as honor. For Koresh, standing by that door was more than protection. It was a way of life. Alex sat up, resting his elbows on his knees. Back on Earth, people protect each other too. Parents protect children. Friends protect friends. But we don't call it duty. We call it love or loyalty. Koresh blinked slowly as if trying to understand. Different word. Same meaning. Alex smiled faintly. For a moment, the fear in his chest eased. Talking to Koresh made the darkness feel less heavy. Another scrape echoed in the hall. Both of them froze, listening. The sound dragged along the floor, closer and closer, then stopped just outside the door. Alex's skin prickled. He could almost picture glowing eyes staring through the metal. Without a word, Koresh placed his hand on the door. Alex followed, pressing his palm beside Koresh's. His heart hammered, but he held steady. The silence outside stretched, then broke with a low hiss. The creature lingered, testing, before finally retreating again. When the sound faded, Alex pulled back, breathing hard. He looked at Koresh. Why don't they just leave? If they're afraid, why stay at all? Koresh's voice was steady. Predators are patient. They wait for weakness. They test until morning. If we falter, they strike. Alex shuddered. The idea of those creatures waiting for him to fail made the weight in his chest heavier. He didn't want to falter, but he was only human. His body was tired, his mind was stretched thin. How long could he keep standing like this? To distract himself, he started talking again. On Earth, we have stories about monsters waiting in the dark. People used to tell them to children so they'd stay inside at night. Some were about wolves, some about spirits. But in all the stories, the people survived by staying together, by outlasting the night. Koresh glanced at him. Then your stories are true. We are living one now. Alex laughed softly, though it came out more tired than amused. Yeah, I guess we are. The silence settled again, broken only by the faint hum of the walls. Alex leaned against the door, sitting on the floor now beside Koresh. His eyes drooped, exhaustion pulling at him. But Koresh's presence was steady, and it gave him enough courage to stay awake. Koresh, Alex said suddenly, his voice low. Do you really think humans are strong enough to scare these things? Koresh's eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light. Yes, strength is not always claws or teeth. Strength is spirit. Yours burns bright. They see it. They fear it. Alex let the words sink in. Maybe Koresh was right. Maybe strength wasn't about muscle or weapons. Maybe it was about standing even when every part of you wanted to run. The hours dragged on. More scrapes. More growls. Each time Alex pressed his hand to the door, sometimes with Koresh, sometimes alone. Each time the predators pulled back. Slowly, Alex began to believe in what Koresh said. He began to feel that strange, invisible power inside him, the power to endure. At one point, the scraping stopped completely. The silence was deep, almost peaceful. Alex leaned his head back against the wall, his eyes half closed. For the first time, he thought he might make it to morning. Koresh remained on guard, never resting, but when he glanced down at Alex, there was something different in his gaze. Pride. Together, human and alien sat in silence, two shapes in the dim room, holding back the darkness with nothing but patience, courage, and the strange strength of trust. The predators were still out there waiting. But the night was no longer theirs. The first faint light of dawn crept through the edges of the sealed dormitory. Alex could not see it clearly, but he felt it, a soft warmth brushing his skin and hinting at the end of the long night. His body was sore, his muscles stiff from hours of sitting, standing, and pressing against the door, but a strange satisfaction filled him. He had survived. Koresh remained at his post, unwavering. His shadow stretched across the room in the growing light, a silent protector who had not wavered even once. Alex looked at him and realized that the alien's patience had given him more than protection. It had given him courage. The creatures outside had grown bold during the night, testing, pressing, growling, and yet each time they had retreated. Alex had come to understand why Koresh had said humans were strong. Strength was not measured in claws or scales or size. It was measured in endurance, in courage, in the refusal to yield even when the world pressed down on you. He pressed his hand against the door again, the metal cool but comforting beneath his palm. He remembered Koresh's words, strength shows when tested. For hours he had been tested, and for hours he had stood firm. His fear had not gone away, but it had become a tool instead of a weakness. Koresh, Alex said softly, his voice breaking the quiet. They're gone now, right? Koresh tilted his head, as always thoughtful. They retreat for now, but testing may come again. Never completely gone. Alex nodded, though he felt a flicker of frustration. He wanted relief, a break from the tension. But he also understood Koresh's point. Predators were not like humans. They tested relentlessly, sensing weakness. They were cunning, patient, and dangerous. Complacency was the greatest risk. He let his hand slide from the door and sat back on the floor. His legs were stiff, his back sore, and yet he felt an unusual calm. The night had not broken him. He had survived it, and somehow in surviving he had grown. Koresh's eyes flicked toward him. Your kind surprises me.
I expected weakness.
But you endure. Alex smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in hours. I didn't know I could, he admitted. I never thought I had it in me. Koresh's black eyes seemed to soften. Humans are full of hidden strength. I have seen it before, but you carry it in your fear. You control it. Alex leaned back against the wall, exhausted, and thought about the night. Every scrape, every growl, every thud against the door had tested him, pushed him to the edge. And yet he had held firm sometime. As with Koresh's hand beside his, sometimes alone, he realized that maybe this was the essence of strength. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. Another sound came from the corridor, faint and tentative. Alex stiffened, but then realized it was not the predators. It was the sound of building systems coming back online. The alarm that had locked them in was fading completely. A sense of relief washed over him. Morning was coming. Koresh relaxed slightly, though he did not move from his post. Alex could see the lines of tension easing from his body, the rigid posture softening just a fraction. Even the alien seemed aware that the worst of the night had passed. Alex pushed himself to his feet, stretching his legs. The room still felt small, the walls curved and enclosing, but it no longer felt threatening. The night had taken something from him, yes, energy, comfort, a sense of safety, but it had given him something more. Confidence, a spark he had never known he possessed. Koresh finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You survived. Learned something. You are not fragile." Alex nodded, feeling warmth in the praise. He had doubted himself so many times, thought he was weak, thought he would crumble under pressure. But standing there through the night, facing the unseen predators, he had proven otherwise, not to Koresh, not even fully to himself. But the proof was real. He glanced at Koresh. "Thank you," he said, "for standing guard all night, for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Koresh's gaze met his, steady and unreadable, but Alex could sense approval. "Duty, together, not only you survive. Together survive." Alex's heart swelled with an unfamiliar warmth. He realized something important. Survival was not just about being strong alone. It was about trust, about partnership, about having someone beside you when the night was at its darkest. Koresh had not left him alone. He had not allowed him to falter. That presence had made all the difference. The first true light of morning filtered through the tiny gap in the sealed door. It was faint, pale, but it brought hope. Alex stepped closer, placing a hand on the door again, feeling the warmth of the rising sun in a way he hadn't expected. The predators would come again, perhaps, but he was no longer just a frightened human trapped in a room. He was part of something stronger, something bigger, something that could withstand fear itself. He looked at Koresh and realized that in the quiet hours of the night, they had learned from each other. Koresh had learned that humans carried a strength beyond the alien senses, and Alex had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but its careful mastery. The room was still. The creatures outside had withdrawn, retreating into the darkness of the hall. Alex and Koresh remained, two shapes in the growing light, guardians of each other and of the quiet peace that had returned. For the first time in many hours, Alex allowed himself to sit back, to relax, to let the tension drain from his shoulders. The night had ended and he had survived it. And with Koresh standing beside him, he knew he could survive whatever else the galaxy might throw at him. Morning light spread slowly through the dorm, soft and pale. Alex blinked against it, stretching his stiff limbs. The long night had left him drained, but a strange sense of triumph filled him. He had survived, he had endured, and in the process he had discovered something new about himself. Koresh remained at the door, vigilant but calmer now. The predators had retreated completely, fading into the shadows of the hall. Alex glanced at him and realized that the alien's steadfast presence had been more than protection. It had been a lesson. Koresh had taught him to focus, to control his fear, to stand firm even when everything felt impossible. Alex pushed himself to his feet, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The room no longer felt like a cage. The door, once a barrier that had kept him trapped and frightened, now seemed almost ordinary. He had faced the unknown and lived to see the sun. Koresh turned slightly to look at him. His expression, usually unreadable, seemed softer in the morning light. Alex felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the rising sun. Respect, trust, something deeper than words could capture. "You did well," Koresh said quietly. "Not only survived, but endured, learned to control fear. This is rare among humans," Alex chuckled weakly. "I never thought of myself as rare or strong, I just wanted to live through the night." Koresh's black eyes glinted faintly. "Living is strength. Your species carries this in every heart. Others fear it, even predators." Alex thought back on the night, the scraping, the growls, the pressure of the door under his hands. Every moment had been terrifying, but every moment had been a test, and he had passed not because he had weapons or alien power, but because he had refused to give up. He had survived with courage and calm, even when he felt weak. The dorm's alarm systems began shutting down completely. The red lights dimmed, leaving the soft morning glow to fill the room. Alex could finally breathe freely. The long vigil, the waiting, the fear, they were behind him. He turned to Koresh. I don't know how to thank you. You stood guard all night. You could have rested, but you didn't. You kept me safe. Koresh's expression did not change, but his voice carried something like pride. Duty, not for thanks. Protecting you is my responsibility. Your survival shows your spirit. That is reward enough. Alex nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. The night had been long, but he had emerged stronger. He had discovered courage he never knew he possessed. He had discovered a connection with Koresh, a bond of trust and respect. And he had discovered that humanity had something special, something even predators could sense and fear: resilience, endurance, and an unyielding spirit. The corridor outside was quiet now. No sounds of scraping, no low growls, no thuds against the door. The creatures had gone, and the dormitory returned to its usual calm. Alex allowed himself a small smile. He had survived the night, and he had grown stronger in ways he could hardly explain. He looked at Koresh again. You believe humans are strong, right? He asked, a hint of humor in his tired voice. Koresh tilted his head as always. Strong in ways you do not always see. Tonight, you proved it. Alex laughed softly, shaking his head. I guess I did, didn't I? Koresh's stance softened slightly, though he did not move from his post. Yes, you did. For a long moment they stood together, human and alien, side by side in the morning light. The night had tested them both, but they had endured. Together they had faced the unknown and proven that courage and trust could overcome even the darkest fears. Alex felt a swell of pride and gratitude. The predators outside had been powerful, unknown and frightening, yet they had not broken him. And neither had the night. He realized something important. Strength was not always about fighting. Sometimes it was about holding still, staying calm and trusting that you could endure. He stepped away from the door finally, stretching his limbs fully. The stiffness in his body remained, but the weight in his chest was gone. He had survived, and he had learned that humans carried a power the galaxy could not always understand, but it could sense, and it could respect. Koresh moved slightly, gesturing toward the hall. Morning comes. You may leave room now. Predators retreat. You're safe. Alex nodded, feeling gratitude stronger than words could convey. He took a deep breath of the warm, quiet air. For the first time in hours, he felt free. The night had ended. The predators were gone, and he had survived with courage he had never known he had. As he stepped past Koresh and into the hallway, the sunlight growing brighter with every step, Alex knew that he would never forget this night. He had faced fear, endured it, and discovered strength. And beside him, Koresh had stood, not just as a protector, but as a partner, teaching him that courage was not just alien or human, but universal. The dormitory doors opened fully now, and the first students of the day began to move through the halls. Alex took one last look at Koresh. The alien's tall shadow stretched long in the morning light, steadfast and silent. Alex smiled, realizing that in the galaxy, humans were not weak. Humans were strong in ways that mattered most, through courage, endurance, and the refusal to yield even when the night was longest. He stepped into the sunlight, leaving the darkness behind, carrying with him a strength he had only just discovered, and the knowledge that no matter the fear ahead, he could face it.